Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our faculty development program on artificial intelligence and machine learning day 2. So let us quickly recap what we have covered on day 1. As part of day 1, we understood the history of Python, followed by the features of Python and the fundamental topics like variables, data types, and operators. So we have understood all these 6 topics. And we have also completed the hands-on, right? Yes. So coming to the history of Python, Python was officially launched in 1991 and the father of Python is Guido van Rossum. The name Python was programming language was named after a snake name because of it is taken from a circus name. It is called as Monty Python's Flying Circus. And next to it, we understood features of Python. Under the features of Python, we understood the characteristics. Why Python is, widely used in today's market. Because of these features, Python is simple. We'll have user-friendly syntaxes. It is platform independent. Then it is interpreted language. It is a high-level language. Dynamically typed language. It supports both functional and object-oriented programming. So in this way, we have n number of features for Python. Then the variables which help us to store the values. So what are the values called? They are called literals. They are called literals. In order to store the literals, the values, we need some objects. And these objects are called as variables. We also have identifiers. Yes. So all the variables are identifiers, but not all identifiers are variables in Python. Then we understood data types. How many data types we have in Python, guys? We have 14 types, which are categorized into 6 categories. What are they? Fundamental, sequence, list type. Then we have set category data types, dict category data types, and non-category data types. So under each and every data type, we have out of 14 data types. Under fundamental category data types, we have int, float, bool, and complex. What is the purpose of fundamental category data types? To store single value, one value. In order to store integer values, we use int. In order to store decimal values, we go with float. In order to store true or false values, we go with bool. In order to store complex values, we'll go with complex. Then, next to fundamental category data types, we have sequence category, in which, what is the purpose of sequence category? To store sequence of values, multiple values, in which we have str, bytes, byte array, and range. Range. Purpose of str category data type. str data type help us to store sequence of characters. Bytes data type help us to store positive integers ranging from 0 to 255. But bytes is a immutable data type. Byte array is similar to bytes, which is a mutable data type. Then what about range? Range also help us to store sequence of values. Positive values, positive integers with interval. Right? So we have understood fundamental category data types. Next to fundamental category data types, we understood list category data types, in which we have list, tuple. List and tuple. What is the purpose of list category data types? They help us to store single values or multiple values, same type or different type. They can be unique as well as duplicates. Duplicates are also allowed under list category data types. Right. So coming to list and tuple, both are similar, but only in one aspect. What is it? List is mutable type, tuple is immutable type. We cannot change, we cannot edit. Right. Then next to fundamental list category data types, we understood set category data types, in which we have again two: set, frozen set. Set and frozen set. What is the purpose of set and frozen set? Set category data types. They help us to store multiple values of same type or different type, but unique values only. We cannot have duplicates under set and frozen set objects. Again, they are similar, but in one aspect they are different. What it is? Again, it is under the mutable. Set is mutable in case of add function, and set acts as immutable type in case of item assignment. Whereas frozen set is, it's a complete immutable type. It's a complete immutable object. Right. And finally, we also discussed dict data type, which help us to store the data in the form of key value pairs. Key value pairs. Keys and values are separated by colon, whereas key value pairs are separated by comma. Right? Yes. So these are the different data types we have understood. Next to data types, we also understood operators. What are the different operators that we have? First of all, what are operators? Operators are nothing but symbols. They are some symbols which help us to do some operations. What are the different types of operators that we have learned? In total, there are 7 types of operators. They are arithmetic operator, assignment operator, relational operator, logical operator, membership operator, identity operator, as well as bitwise operators. Right? We have understood all the different types of operators with examples. Right. So today we are going to start a new topic, and these are very, very important concepts coming to the core concepts of Python. So in Python, we have two parts. One is core Python and another one is advanced Python. So coming to the core Python, these 4 topics play a crucial role. What are they? Conditional statements, loops, loop control statements. There are some statements which help us to control the loops. And finally, the functions. So let us understand one by one. As usual, we'll go in the same way like how we have understood the topics in the last class. In the same way, we will be understanding today's topics as well, guys. So focus. Right. So what exactly are flow control statements? What is the topic? What exactly are these flow control statements? Is we use flow control statements to perform a certain operation. If I want to perform a certain operation, I generally go and use flow control statements. And the purpose of flow control statement is they help us to perform operation when the given condition, when the specified condition is either true or false. Either true or false. So whether the condition is true or false, based on the output that we get for this condition, the respective operation performs. It performs the respective operation, or it also performs the certain operation repeatedly for finite number of times. So the same operation will be performed for finite number of times until the condition becomes false. So either in both the cases, we use flow control statements, and in Python we have three types of flow control statements. What are they? They are conditional statements, looping statements, and flow control statements. That they are break, continue, and pass. Break, continue, and pass. So all these three type of statements come under flow control statements. So conditional statements are also called as selection statements, branching statements. When it comes to looping, looping is nothing but iterative statements, repetitive statements, repeating the same task, right? So that is why they are called as repetitive statements. So we'll be understanding one by one. Okay, so let me start with conditional statements. What exactly are these conditional statements? The purpose of conditional statements or branching statements or selection statements is they help us to perform a certain operation. An operation will be performed when the condition is true. When a certain condition is true, it performs an next operation. What if this condition is false? If the condition is false, then it performs the other operation, Y operation. But how many times? Only once. The operation will be performed only for once. So this is the difference that you'll understand between conditional and looping statements. Between conditional and looping statement, you'll understand the difference. Under conditional statement, the operation will be performed for only once, depending on the condition, whether it becomes true or false. And in Python, we have four types of conditional statements. They are simple if statement, if-else statement, if-elif-else statement. We'll understand one by one. Okay. The syntax, in which case we use if statement, if-else statement, if-elif-else statements, and finally match case statement. Okay. So these are the new conditional statements that were added from Python version 3.10. From Python version 3.10, match case statements were also included. So what if I use a Python version less than 3.10? Match case statements will not execute. It will throw you errors. It will return you some exceptions. So I hope it is clear. Now let us understand one by one. Simple if statement followed by if-else statement, if-elif-else statement, and match case statements. Let me start with simple if statement. It is very simple. You just have only one if statement. So the syntax for simple if statement is if keyword followed by the test condition. Followed by the test condition. And you will find a symbol called colon, two dots. This is called colon, which represents the indentation symbol. In the concept of flow control statements, like conditional statements or looping statements, we'll use this indentation concept, guys. Even in functions, yes, we continue using this indentation concept. What exactly indentation refer is, this symbol. So this symbol tells that to the PVM, whatever the statements that are next to that symbol, okay, they represent indentation block. They represent indentation block. And you observe here, these statements are not starting from the start of the line. By default, there is some space. And this space take by default 4 spaces. It takes 4 spaces. That doesn't mean you should always go with 4 spaces. I can also try with 3 spaces, 2 spaces, but at least 1 space should be provided. If I am providing 1 space, that 1 space should be provided for all the lines. I hope you're getting the point. But if you're not comfortable in setting the spaces, by default, if you click on enter at this position, it goes to the next line by leaving 4 spaces from the starting, which means the next line is part of indentation block. It is part of if block only. This is not a new line. This is not at all a new line. Okay, but you see here, all these statements are part of if condition, if statement, but there is one more statement here. Other statements in program. Is it part of if statement? No. Why? There is no space in front of this line. Like, however I see the spaces here, I don't see the same number of spaces here. So this is not part of if condition, if statement. So how exactly if statement works is, initially once after entering the if statement, it checks for the condition. You will provide the condition. Yes. If the condition is true, it executes the block of statements. The indentation block of statements will be executed line by line. Okay, what if the condition is not true? Then it does not enter the indentation block of statements. If it is false, it directly comes to other statements in the program. So that means it will skip all these block of statements. I hope it is clear. Anyhow, we'll give a try. We'll take an example and let us understand how simple if statement works. Right? So, coming to the explanation part, if that we are using here is a keyword. It is a keyword. Then we are also providing the condition, the test condition. So this condition will be used for evaluation. Okay. Depending on the output that we get, whether it is true or false, accordingly, the next step will be taken. If the condition is true, then it executes the block of statements. The indentation block of statements gets executed. What if the condition is false? It does not enter. It does not execute these block of statements. It skips them, goes to the other statements in the program. But for how many times these assume that the condition is true? Okay, if the condition is true, it enters. Yes. It starts executing line by line. Yes. But it executes only for once. It executes only for once. Why? This is part of conditional statements. This is not loops. Right? So conditional statement, even the condition is holding true, the block of statements will be executed only for once. I hope it is clear. Now let me take an example. I'll go back to Spider. Yes. What am I doing here, guys? I'm coming up with an input function. Input function generally, it gets the value from the end user. Okay, the value will be returned from the end user and that value will be dynamically assigned to the variable, the object. So it is asking you a question. Do you have ticket? See, when I execute, you see here it is still under execution. It is not done. It is not done. The red color represents the line is under execution. So it is asking me a question. Do you have ticket? So I'll just keep it as yes, I have ticket. I'll keep it as yes. See what happened? This yes got assigned to TKT, the object. And by default, input function, stores the value using str type. str type will be used by default to store the values that we get from the end users. Now, there is an if statement. A simple if statement is being used, guys. What does the if statement says? If condition, then followed by, this becomes my condition. If statement in which I'll start with if keyword followed by my condition. Next to condition, I should keep colon, which represents indentation symbol. If you don't keep this colon, PVM, Python virtual machine does not understand. Okay, once after keeping colon, if you click on enter, see, by default it leaves 4 spaces. It is going to leave 4 spaces. It is not going to start from here. No. If you see here, I'll click on enter. Again, it is going to start from, position 5. I hope it is making sense. Now, what do we have under the block of statements? We just had three lines of code where I have used print functions. We have used print function. So if this condition is true, if the condition satisfies, it goes into this block of statements and it executes line by line. It prints enter into theater. Then it prints watch movie. Then it prints enjoy the movie. So only these 3 lines are part of if block. If statement. Will line number 544 is also part of if block? No. It is not part of if block. How can you identify it? You see here, it is not starting. See, it does not have that indentation. If it is also starting from this position, then it will be part of if block, if statement. But it is not starting at position 5, like how we have the other print function, the print statements. So this is altogether, this is not part of the if statement. This is other, the other lines of code that we have in the Python program. So if this condition is false, it directly comes to line number 544. I hope it is making sense. So now let us check the condition, guys. What is the condition that we have here? TKT is equals to S. What is this? What is this operator called, guys? This is called what it is? Conditional operator. Relational operator. Yes. We have under conditional operator, we have is equals to, not is equals to, greater than, less than, not, greater than equals to, less than equals to. Right? So this double is equals to represents is equals to in Python. It is representing is equals to in Python. So what is the value that we have in TKT? It is yes. So S and S both are same. So obviously the condition is matching here. So obviously, it enters the if statement. The indentation block of lines gets executed. So let me execute. And when you are executing this, ensure that you are also selecting together. You have to select all these lines of code till here together. Anyhow, line number 544 is not part of it. But still, why am I executing? You'll understand this. Okay, see, I'm executing. Just give me a minute. Yes, let me execute now. Yes, you see here, earlier there is indentation issue. See, inconsistent use of tabs and space in indentation. Because of that, it is not allowing us to, complete this if condition. The if block was not executed earlier, but now it got executed. So the condition became true because of that, it executed all the statements next to it. It also executed the other line in the program. Now, let me rerun the code, but this time I'll just keep the value as, no, I don't have any ticket. I'll keep it as no. Okay. If I keep it as no, I'll rerun the code, lines of code again. So, will you give a try? What will be the output here? What will be the output? It will not enter the if block. The statements, the block of statements that we have in the if block will not get executed. Why? The condition is not matching, guys. If the condition doesn't match, it directly goes to the other lines of code in the program. Yes, only the last one. Clear? Yes. So in this way, simple if statement works. And you can have multiple if statements. Multiple. I hope it is clear. Let us go to the next type. Under conditional statements, the second type of statement is if-else statement. If-else statement. So earlier we have discussed if statement. Yes. Now it is if-else statement. So you will have two blocks. One is if block and the other one is else block. We will have if block followed by else block. Under the if block, we'll have the condition. Okay, the same test condition we'll have. Okay, if this condition is holding true, it enters and executes all these block of statements 1. Block of statements 1 will be executed. What if this condition is false? It goes to the else block. If this condition is false, it goes to the else block and it executes the block of statements 2. Once after completing this if-else block execution, it also executes the other programs, the other statements in the program. So we are representing how if-else statement works using flowchart. If the condition is true, it executes the block of statements 1. If the condition is false, it executes the block of statements true. Okay, once after completing this, at the end, anyhow, it will execute the other statements in the program. So coming to if-else statement, this is a syntax in which we use two keywords. What are they? If, else. Yesterday we have discussed the concept of variables, keywords. So keywords are nothing but reserved words in Python and they do have a specific meaning. Okay, so if is a keyword which is in lowercase, else is a keyword in lowercase. Right, now let me take an example for if-else statement and let us understand how exactly if-else statements work. What am I doing? Again, I am using input function. Yes. So this input function is going to display this message, enter age of citizen. Okay. So it allows the end user to enter the age and that age will be converted to int type. The value will be converted to int type. Why? By default input function uses str. It uses str type to store the values. But age is generally a number. So I'm converting this str to integer. Nothing but int using int type. I'm using int function for performing the conversion. So let me execute this, guys. So you see here the message, enter age of citizen. Okay, so let me give my age. Anyhow, I'm not 25, but still, I'll click on enter. So 25 got stored in variable age. Done. Now, next to the line we have if-else block, if block and else block. If-else statement. So what do you find here? Under the if block, there is a condition. What does the condition says? If age is greater than or equals to 18. If age is greater than or equals to 18, okay, then it executes line number 549. Prints citizen is eligible to vote. So right to vote. We know that in our country, we have a criteria for casting the vote. So every one of us should be 18 or above 18 to cast our vote. So this program helps us to check whether we are eligible to vote or not. Okay, so if age is greater than or equals to 18, it executes line number 549. If this condition is false, it comes to else block and it executes line number 551, where it prints citizen is not eligible to vote. Simple. Right? So let me execute all the lines of code together. The entire if-else statement has to be executed. The entire if-else statement has to be executed. So what will be the output? The output will be obviously citizen is eligible to vote. Why? 25 is greater than or equals to 18, right? It is true. 25 is greater than 18. Then, so it prints citizen is eligible to vote. Citizen is eligible to vote. What if I pass the age of the citizen is only 15? In this case, it executes the block of statements that are in else block. It prints citizen is not eligible to vote. Simple. I hope it is clear, guys. Now, let us understand the third type under conditional statements or branching statements. It is if-elif-else statements. It is if-elif-else statements. What is the purpose of if-elif-else statements is it helps us to evaluate multiple conditions. In if and if-else statements, we were able to evaluate only one condition. But in if-elif-else statements, we can evaluate multiple conditions. The syntax is if keyword followed by the test condition, then the block of statements 1. So these will be the block of statements under the if block, if statement. Then next to if, we have elif block. Again, in elif block also we'll have a condition. Okay, so under if this condition satisfies, it goes and executes the block of statements 2. What if this condition is also false? It goes to the next elif block. So in this way I can have multiple elif blocks. If you see here, I can have multiple elif blocks. It depends on the number of conditions that you have. And finally else block. So we'll also have the else block of statements. If all these conditions are failing, all the conditions are failing, then we directly goes and executes the block of statements in else block. See guys. So the three keywords that we have used in if, elif, else statement are if, elif, and else. These are the three keywords. If the condition, okay, if this condition is true, it directly executes the block of statement 1 and it ignores the rest of the blocks. Not required. Okay, these blocks will be ignored and it directly comes to other statements in the program. But what if this condition 1 is false? It comes to condition 2. It checks for condition 2. If the condition 2 is true, if it is satisfying, then it go and prints, it executes the block of statements 2. So this journey continues, guys. The same concept, okay, but here you probably observe that there are number of blocks getting increased. And whatever the else block that we have come up here is, it is optional. It's not mandatory, it is optional. Writing else block is optional. Whether would you like to keep it or not, it's up to you. Okay, it's not mandatory. Let us also understand the flow chart. Okay, so the flow chart is nothing but you'll have the if block initially. If the condition is holding true, it executes block of statements, then directly other statements in the program. Right? In this way, the journey continues. The flow continues. We'll take an example for if, elif, else statement. So, a program for identifying the biggest of three numbers. So, if there are three numbers, so this particular program helps us to get the biggest one out of the three. So, in line number 556, we are using int function and input function. So, it is asking us to enter the first value. So, let us enter an value initially. I'll give it as 5. So, 5 got assigned to A. Then, in the same way for B, asking for second value, I'll keep it as 6. Done. And the third value for C, I'll make it as 7. That's it. So I've given three values 5, 6 and 7. Okay. Now I'm going to use if, elif, else statement. Okay. So if you observe properly, do I have an else block? No. Else block is not here. Else block is optional. It's not mandatory. Okay. But let us understand the conditions. Under if block, what is the condition that we have? If A greater than B and A greater than C. So that means A greater than B and A greater than C. If these conditions are holding true, then it enters the if block and executes the block of statements. It executes the block of statement, line number 560. What kind of operator did we use here? These two are relational operators, which returns either true or false, greater than. What about AND? AND is a logical operator, which also returns either true or false. Okay, so when does AND operator return true? When both the conditions, when both the relational condition, the expressions that we have, okay, if they hold true, only then the AND operator returns true. So let us check the conditions. 5 greater than 6. Here itself we got false. So we need not check the other one. So obviously this condition is failing. Will it execute line number 560? No. No. It goes to first elif block. And again we have the condition here. What is the condition that we have here? B greater than A. Is B greater than A? Yes. 6 greater than 5. So this is true. B greater than C. 6 greater than 7? False. So even this condition is also false. Obviously line number 562 will also not get executed. Line number 562 also does not execute. What about line number 563? The condition that we have in 563, is that holding true? Yes. 7 greater than 5 and 7 greater than 6. Both the conditions are true. Obviously, AND operator will also return true. Line number 564 gets executed. In which what do you find here? We have format function. This is called string formatting, where the values in these objects, in these variables, get formatted into the string data. So biggest of, what is the value of A? 5. What is the value of B? 6. Value of C? 7. So it will be biggest of 5, 6, 7 is equals to 7. This will be the output, guys. If this condition is also false and it finally checks for the last condition and it returns, it prints all values are equal. Obviously, if these conditions are failing, that means only the value should be equal. I hope it is making sense. Now let me execute this if-elif-else statement together. See. Done? Yes. Now, let us understand the fourth type of conditional statement. It is match case statement. It is match case statement. This match case statement was being introduced from Python version 3.10. Earlier, there is no match case statements. If you try to apply these match case statements in Python versions less than 3.10, it will throw you exceptions. Even you can give a try, guys. It will throw you exceptions. But what is the purpose of match case statements is they help us to handle menu driven applications or pre-designed conditions. If there are any pre-designed conditions, okay, in order to handle these pre-designed conditions, I can go and use match case statements. And here is the syntax of match case statement. What does the syntax is? Match keyword followed by choice expression. We'll keep the expression here. Okay. Then colon. I'll keep each and every case. Different cases. I can have n number of cases. Case is again a keyword. Along with the case will come up with the label. If this label one is matching with the expression, then the block of statements 1 get executed. Okay. If this label 1 is not matching with the expression, it goes to label 2. Nothing but the case 2. In this way, it goes till n number of labels. It checks for all the labels one by one. And wherever there is a match, it executes the respective block of statements. What if all the labels are not matching? It goes for the default block of statements. The default block of statements get executed. The default block, case underscore. This is called default case block. Probably I'll show you the explanation so that you guys can catch up. The match and the case are the keywords, and the choice expression that we have next to match, it can be either int str or bool type. Okay. If the values of the choice expression is matching with the case labels, then the respective block of statements will execute. The same whatever we have discussed. If none of these labels match with the choice expression, the default block gets executed. What is this default block? It is nothing but case underscore. And this default case block is optional. It is not mandatory. This is also optional. Okay. Now let me take an example to understand how match case statements work. Probably if you understand this example, it will be clear, guys. What am I doing here? I'm taking input function, okay, and I'm asking the end user to enter the weak name. I'm asking the end user to enter the weak name. Okay. So the weak name will get stored in the object WK name. Yes. Obviously. So what is the choice expression that we are going to keep here? It is nothing but the weak name. So if the labels get matched with the choice expression, the corresponding block gets executed. So if I pass Sunday, so the label that we have, label 1, Sunday will map with WK name. Yes. So obviously line number 574 gets executed, in which the formatting is getting done. So what is the value that we have for week WK name? It is nothing but Sunday. So it prints Sunday is a holiday. I hope you are getting the point. So let me execute one. You'll understand. So it is asking me to enter the name. So I'll keep it as probably Friday. Done. This Friday got stored in WK name. It got stored in WK name. Now I'll use match case statement. I'm using match case statement. I'll execute all these multiple cases together. Wherever the label matches with the choice expression, the respective block of statements get executed. So what will be the output? Obviously the output will be Friday is working day. Friday is working day will be printed. See, what exactly happened here? The case of Friday will be, the Friday that we have here will be checked with the Friday that is actually present in WK name. The case is same, the value is also same. So it will return me Friday is working day. It returns Friday is working day. That's it. You can also give a try, guys. See, let me change the case. Let me change the value first of all. I'll change the value. This time I'll pass some random value, which is not a week. Okay. Accepted. Yes. It also got stored. Now let me, use match case statement. When I use this match case statement, which label gets executed? Which label maps with the choice expression? None of them matches. So by default, it goes to the default case block. That is line number 587. And having this default case block is optional. So NEUT is not weekday. It is not at all a weekday. NEUT represents next era Unitech. Okay, it is not a weekday. That is what it is printing us. I hope it is clear, guys. When do we generally use match case statements? When we have predefined conditions. Menu driven applications. See. So if the match keys, uh, whatever the choice expression that we have, if the choice expression matches with any of the label, that corresponding block of statements will execute. That's it. Simple. So this marks the end of conditional statements. The end of conditional statements. Now let us go and understand the next type under flow control statements. They are looping statements. Looping or iterative or repetitive statements. Loop, repetition, iterations. So all they mean same. The purpose of loops, looping statements is they help us to perform an operation repeatedly. Not for once, repeatedly. For how many times? For finite number of times. Until the condition becomes false. So, till this condition getting false, what happens? The operation gets performed repeatedly, time again, time again, time again. But for how many times? For finite number of times. And in Python, there are two types of looping statements. What are they? They are while or while else. While or while else. The second one is for or for else. For or for else statements. Looping statements. So especially when you are dealing with looping statements, okay, initially you'll try to understand the syntaxes, that is fine, accepted. Later on you'll try to do some, understand some loops, a small loops, that is fine. But you should memorize three important points. What are they? Initialization part. We initialize, then conditional part. We'll also have a condition, and the third one is updation part. Okay, so these 3 points, we should keep it in our mind, especially when we are dealing with loops, looping statements. I hope it is clear, guys. So let me start with one by one. Initially, let us understand for or for else loop. For or for else loop. What is this for loop or for else loop? It is a type of looping statement which help us to perform an operation for finite number of times. And the syntax for or for else loop is for variable name in iterable object. What are iterable object? Iterable objects are the objects which contain multiple elements in it. We have already discussed yesterday, right? If you remember, probably bytes, byte array, range. In order to get the values, in order to access the values from these three type data, that objects, what did we do? We used loops. We used for loop to access the values. Am I right? Yes. But the syntax is, see, for keyword followed by the variable name. It can be anything. In general, we use I. I is generally used widely as variable in iterable object. This iterable object can be anything. An object which contains multiple elements. Then the same colon symbol which represents indentation. Then the block of statements one by one, one by one. Next to this block of statements, as usual, we can have other statements in the program. So this other statements in the program will not be part of for loop. No. Okay. So this is syntax one. The other one is syntax 2. What makes the difference here? Adding an else block. So what can you understand from it? Else block is not mandatory. Else block is optional. So for and in are two keywords, and we also know that in is a membership operator, right? So we have two keywords for and in, and the for loop keep on iterating. It iterates for n number of times, for finite number of times, till the operation returns, till the condition gets false. Right? Now let me take a few examples to understand for loops or for else loop. What am I doing? I'm going to store a sequence of characters. Next Era Unitech, the name of our organization. Next Era Unitech, I want to store, okay, and in order to store sequence of characters, we know that we by default str type will be used, right? So I'm going to store this next Era Unitech to a variable, an object s. Done? Yes, it is. Okay, then I'm printing by using for loop. It got printed, and I also want to print hyphens. Hyphens got printed next to it. Hyphens also got printed. Now I have for loop, guys. What do you see here? For loop. Let us understand this for loop. The syntax is for variable. What is the variable that I'm using? X. For variable in iterable object. What is the iterable object that I'm using? It is str type data, because there are multiple values in it. So X takes each and every character. For one iteration, the first iteration, X takes N. For the second iteration, X takes E. For the third iteration, X takes capital X. So on till H. Then after taking N, what happens? In the first iteration, after X takes N, it goes to the for loop and it prints. It is going to execute line number 600, where it prints that value that X has. Backslash T represents tab space. Okay, so it prints tab space, then the character. Simple. So in this way, it prints all the characters. Yes. So next Era Unitech will be printed one by one. Each and every character will get printed one by one. Next to it, what it does is it goes to else block, and it also prints backslash n, which represents a new line character. Within the new line, it will print hyphens. It prints hyphens. So let me execute this for else loop, for else statement. Done. See what happened? Started with n. So it prints tab space, then it prints n. It prints tab space, it goes and prints e. Then so on. All iterations will be done. Okay, it performs all the iterations. Then it goes to the else block and it also prints hyphens. Job done. So what we are doing here? We are repeating the task. The same task gets repeated for finite number of times. But in conditional statements, it executes only the block of statements for once. But under looping statements, for finite number of times. That is the difference between conditional statements and looping statements. One more example to understand for loop, for else loop. Just give a try, guys. Understand. Try to understand on your own. What we are doing in line number 605, we are using input function as well as int function. So it is asking, it will display a message, enter a number, gets displayed when the end user has to pass a number. So let me pass a number value as 5. So this 5 gets stored to n and stores value 5. Now I see that if-else statement is also used. If you observe properly, within the if-else statement, we have for-else loop. We have for loop inside if-else statement. So what does the condition say under the if block? In the if block, the condition says if n less than or equals to 0, if the value for the n, if it is less than or equals to 0, it executes line number 607. Is 5 less than or equals to 0? False. The condition is not satisfying. So it directly goes to the else block. It prints line number 609, nothing but the hyphens. Then it also prints a message, mul table for 5. Format function is what we are using. So string formatting will be done. Multiplication table for 5 gets printed. Then it prints hyphens again. Then comes for loop into the picture. What happens? Here we are using many concepts. If you observe properly, we are using multiple concepts. For loop. Let us understand this for loop. For variable I in range of 1 comma 11. 1 comma 11. So can you tell me what all numbers does this range object stores? Tell me the values that this range object stores. Starting from 1, it goes till 10. 11 will not be present, guys. End value minus 1. So I takes initially 1 because 1 is the first value in the range object. So is range an iterable object? Yes. Yes. Okay. I takes 1 and it executes line number 613. It goes inside and what do you have here? It is string formatting again. The format function will be used, where the values of n. What is n here? N is 5. N is 5. So 5 gets formatted in this position. Then it prints cross X. Next to cross, again the formatting will be done where the I value gets formatted is equals to, next to again equals to, we have one more value to be formatted. What is this? Multiplication operator. Asterisk mark. Right? So this asterisk mark is representing multiplication operator. 5 multiplied by 1, it will return 5. So 5 gets, formatted in this position. So this will be printed. In this way, the same task has to be repeated for all the values of I. So that means this is going to generate what? 5 table for me. It is going to generate 5 table, guys. Are we done? No. After completing this for loop, it goes to the else block and it also prints the hyphens. Then we are done. I hope it is clear. For each and every iteration, it also prints a tab space. In front of this, it prints a tab space. Right. So let me execute this entire block. Starting from here, I'm going to execute all the lines of code. Okay. And focus on the console. Did we get the phi table? Yes. We got the phi table. Okay. So this returned me a phi table. If I want 10 table, I should pass 10 for n. Clear? So that is the purpose of for or for else loop. Now, the next one we have in the sequence is while or while else statement. Under the looping statements, the second one is while or while else. What is the purpose of while or while else? Let us understand the syntax first. Again, there are two syntaxes. Syntax one is while keyword followed by the test condition. If this test condition is holding true, it enters the block. The block of statements gets executed. It executes the block of statements. Right? Under syntax 2, along with the while block, we also have else block. We also have else block. In the else block, we have else block of statements. So this else is again optional. Like how we have for else, in the same way we can also have while else loops. Okay. So coming to this loop, while loop, there are two keywords that are used, while and else. So initially it checks for the condition. The condition that we have in the while block that gets evaluated. Okay, if the test condition is true, if it is holding true, what happens? It starts executing the block of statements one by one. It starts executing block of the test condition is false. It executes the other block of statements. If there is else block, else block of statements will be executed. And then it continues for other statements in the program. This is what happens. Okay. So now let me take some examples related to while loops. Observe. What is this, guys? What are we doing in line number 618? It is a list object. Am I right? It is a list object. And how many elements you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 elements. So how can I identify whether it is a list object or not? Square braces. Yes. So this is a list object of size 6. Then I'm using print function to print a message. By using while loop gets printed to the console. Then I'm again using a print function to print hyphens. Right. Now I'm going to initialize my variable I. Okay. So with the value 0. So I is equals to 0 is what I'm coming up with. 0 got stored in I. Now I'll use while loop. I'll use while loop in which I'm specifying the condition. What is the condition says? I value less than length function will return me size. Length of LST. What is LST? List object. What is length of LST? This is 6. What is I? 0. 0 is less than 6? Yes, true. If the condition is true, it enters the block. It enters the while block and starts executing the lines. The block of statements will get executed. So what happens initially? It goes and prints the I value. Is it going to print the I value? Not exactly. Here it is going to use the concept of indexing. We are using the concept of indexing. What is indexing? Indexing represents, it is nothing but accessing a single value, single character. Again, from the data is called indexing. So I want LST of 0. LST of 0 is nothing but 10. So 10 gets printed, guys. 10 gets printed along with the tab space. Next to it, we have I value getting incremented. So next to it, I value becomes 1. 0 plus 1 will be 1. Again, the condition will be checked. This condition will be keeping on checking until it gets false. Okay. The same task will be repeated till the condition becomes false. So in the next iteration, it prints. In the first iteration, it has printed 10. In the next iteration, it prints 20. In the third iteration, it prints Python, Java, true, and then 34.56. Next to 34.56, what happens? Will it print anything? No, this condition itself will go wrong. The condition will go wrong. It gets false. So once after getting the false, the while loop stops and it prints the hyphens. That's it. So let me execute the while loop together. So we are using this while loop to print all the elements in the list object. See, all the elements got printed one by one. Done? Yes. In the same way, will you guys give a try for this? For the next example. For the next example, what we are doing? I'm going to store Nextera Unitech sequence of characters in S. Then I want to print a message by using while loop as well as I want to print hyphens. Done. The same concept. What only got changed is, earlier we used list object. Now we are using str object. We are using str object, guys. Okay. So if the I value less than length of S, okay, it prints each and every character from this S. And it should also end with, by default, there is a parameter called end inside print function and it takes backslash as the default value. So that is the reason we see the values getting printed in the next line every time. But I don't want to print these values in the next line every time. I just want to have, this gets also have a space. And the value of I keep on incrementing. For each and every iteration, the value of I, it keeps on incrementing by 1. So not to check whether the while loop got ended or not, we have added else block and it prints a new line followed by hyphens. So let me execute this entire while loop together. See. Clear? Right. Now let me go to the inner or nested loops. Inner or nested loops. What are inner loops or nested loops? Nothing but the loop inside a loop is called inner loop or nested loop. Okay. A loop inside a loop is called inner loop or nested loop. So what am I doing here? I'm using for loop. Okay. I'm using a for loop inside a for loop. So for inside for. This is an example of inner loops or nested loops. Okay. So let us understand this guys. First of all. So range of 1 comma 6 will return me the values from 1, 2, 3, so on till 5. Yes. So I takes each and every value from the sequence of values. I takes the values. Yes. It prints the lines one by one. Initially I takes 1 and it prints hyphens and it also formats the I value and it prints value of I outer for loop is equals to 1. So I value it is 1. Then again it prints hyphens. It goes to the inner for loop. It goes to the inner for loop where j in range of 1 comma 4. So that means we'll get the values like 1, 2, 3. And for all these three values, the same for loop will be repeated. J takes 1 and it prints the message. Value of j inner for loop is equals to 1. Then j takes 2, again it prints. J takes 3, again it prints. Once after completing all these steps, it goes to else block. It goes to else block. And it also prints hyphens and out of inner for loop. So this after printing the statements under the else block, then the value of I gets changed. I goes for the next iteration. I takes 2. Again it prints. Again it does the same way. In this way I takes till 5. And finally, the final else block gets executed. After all the iterations, the final else block gets executed. So it prints hyphens and it also prints out of outer for loop. This is how nested or inner loops execute. Okay, so let me execute this entire loop, the inner loop. See, starting from I is equals to 1. So I value being 1, it has iterated for all the three values for j. Then I value becoming 2, the three values for j. And I value becoming 3, the three values for j, so on till I value becoming 5. I hope it is clear, guys. We just used two for loops, one inside the other. Now, let me try using while in for. Can I use while loop inside for loop? Yes, any combination is accepted. You can use any combination. Okay, so what am I doing here? Again, it is the same, but instead of for loop, I'm using while loop here. Whatever it might be, but in while loop, you'll have the condition, right? So I initialize j, initially I'm initializing it to 1. Okay. The condition says if j is less than or equals to 3, okay, it enters and prints the statements. And finally the updation is also we are doing here. The value of j is also getting updated for every iteration. So you get the same output. The output will be same, but you will observe the difference. Instead of for loop, we are using while loop. So when we use while loop, there should be a condition. Right? So let me execute this entire nested loop and focus on the output, guys. Is that same? Yes, it will be same, obviously. See, there is no change with respect to the output, but I see the difference between the code for infer while infer. Clear? Yes. So this marks the end of looping statements or repetitive statements. Next to repetitive statements or looping statements, there are miscellaneous flow control statements. And the purpose of these statements is they help us to control. They help us to control the loops. What are they? Break, continue, and pass. Break, continue, and pass. So let us understand one by one, guys. How does these three statements help us to control the loops? I'll start with break. What does break statement does? Is break statement help us to terminate. So directly it helps us to break the execution part of the loop. Okay, depending on the condition that we specify, the loop gets terminated. Here is the syntax. So either you take it in for loop or while loop. I can use, break either in for loop or while loop. Okay. So when the condition is met, obviously, it breaks. It terminates the loop. And this is very important point that we have here. When we use break statements, when we use break statement in the loops, okay, when the break statement is executed, the else part that we have either for loop or while loop, that will not get executed. That will not get executed. Okay, when this break statement is executed, the else block will not get executed. Let me give an example. Probably then you'll understand. What we are doing here, we are trying to store sequence of characters. Next era Unitech. So I am going to store sequence of characters in a object, in a variable S. Done. So next era Unitech got stored to S. Now I'm using for loop. Okay. So I'm using for loop and I'm going to access. I'll get each and every character from this S. So val becomes what? The variable. Val takes each and every character from S. So val initially takes N in the first iteration. Then it enters the loop. What do we have inside it? There is a simple if statement. In the if statement, there is a condition. What does the condition say? The condition says if val equals to h, if this condition is true, okay, then it says we are saying it to break, to permanently stop the loop. But is the condition true? It is false. It is not true. So obviously, as the condition is false, it does not enter the if block. It directly prints the character that val has. It prints the character that val has. So n gets printed. In this way, it prints each and every character. till the condition is met. So N, E, X, T, so on. But you see here the last character is H. The last character is H. So for the last iteration, val takes H. So it's checked for the condition. Once after checking the condition is true here. The condition is true. So it enters the if block and we have break statement. So immediately without printing, okay, it does not check for the other conditions, the other statements. Immediately it terminates the loop. It stops. So that means all the characters, including space, all the characters gets printed, but only H will not be printed in case of this for loop. That is because of the break statement, guys. It is because of the break statement. So let me execute. Do you see H anywhere? Did H got printed? No. H was not printed. It is because of the break statement. I hope it is clear. Right. Now, let us go for the next statement. It is continue. We understood what exactly break does. Let us also understand what does continue statement does. Continue statement, it helps us to continue the execution. It does not stop. It does not break. Okay. It helps us to continue the execution of the loop. Okay. From the starting to the ending. But wherever the condition is met, only there it just skips. It just skips the iteration. Not like break. If the condition is met, break statement is going to terminate the loop. Stop. Break the loop. But in case of continue, what happens is only for that current iteration, wherever the condition is met, it skips the iteration. So that makes the difference between break and continue. But one more important difference, when we use continue statement in a loop, the else part for either for loop or while loop gets executed. Okay, in case of break, the else block will not get executed. But in case of continue, it executes the else block. The else part gets executed, whatever might be the loop. Either it might be for loop or while loop. So I'll take an example and I'll explain you how continue statement works. I want to store sequence of characters, NEUT. Yes, done. So it is the same code. Okay, but what makes the difference between the previous one and this one? I see that the control statement got changed. Earlier it is break. Now it is continue. It is continue, guys. So what exactly happens here is val takes each and every character from S. So val initially takes N. It checks for the condition. Is the condition met? No. It goes and prints the character. The character gets printed. Right. So in the next iteration, val takes E. Again, the condition is not met because E is not U. So it prints the character E. But in the third iteration, U, val takes U and the condition is met. And the condition is met. As the condition is met, it continues. It does not breathe. It skips the current iteration. It does not print. Okay. Immediately it goes for the next iteration. Val takes t and checks for the condition. As the condition is not true, it prints t as well. So when I go with this for loop, it will print me only net. Why u is not printed? It is because of the condition that we have specified. The condition is holding true in case of u. That is why u does not get printed to the console. Clear? Yes. So with this, we mark the end of looping statements. Repetitive statements. Okay. So we have also understood the flow control statements. All the three different types. Under flow control statements, we have understood conditional statements, looping statements, and miscellaneous flow control statements, which help us to control the execution of the loops. Now let us understand the important topic under Python. It is function. It is function. What is the purpose of function in Python? What exactly is function? Let us understand now. The purpose of functions is they help us to provide code reusability. It helps us to provide code reusability. So, if I want to do a specific task, okay, I want to do a specific task, assume for n number of times, for 10 times. Instead of keeping the code for every time, okay, that becomes lengthy. Yes. So if I use a function, if I keep this entire code inside a function, okay, what it is providing me within the source code, within the script, it helps me to reuse it wherever I want, not only for 10 times, 100 times, n number of times. So that is the purpose of functions. It helps us to provide reusability, code reusability. And the definition of function is a subprogram of a main program is called a function. Within a program, you will have a subprogram. This is called function. A part of main program is called function. Okay. And within function, there are two parts. What are they? Function definition, function call. Function definition, function call. Function definition is nothing but we'll define the function, and once after defining the function, we'll call the function whenever I want to use it. When I want to reuse it, I can call it. Okay. So function definition will exist only once. Obviously, you have to define for once. Defining for n number of times is not required. But calling can be done for multiple times upon your requirement. Whenever you want to use the function, you can call it. Okay. So for every function call, there must exist a function definition. If you don't define it and if you try to call it, you'll get name error. You'll get exception. Okay. So how we have to define a function, how we have to call a function, let us understand, guys. What is the purpose of functions? They provide us code reusability. They provide us code reusability. Right. So the syntax for functions are, in general, we use def keyword. def keyword followed by the function name, then the list of parameters. If there are any parameters, we'll specify all the parameters inside the parenthesis, then indentation. Indentation symbol followed by the block of statements where we keep the logic. This becomes our logic. So whenever I want to call the function, I'll use this name. I'll use this name for calling. So this is the syntax for defining a function, a custom defined function. Def keyword followed by function name, then the list of formal parameters, any parameters if you have anything will be specified inside the parenthesis. Then next to it we'll have, colon, the indentation symbol and the logic. But what are these parameters? Okay, there are n number of different types of arguments and parameters. Okay, so before that, let us go and have a look on examples for functions. Let us work out on at least 2-3 examples for functions. You see, is this an example of function? Observe carefully. Def keyword. Then what is my function name? What is my function name? Add op, add operation. Then followed by parenthesis in which I'm not passing any arguments, parameters. I don't want to have any parameters. Then followed by indentation symbol. Followed by indentation symbol. Then I'll keep my, the logic. So I want two numbers, two values for performing addition. So I'll get the values from the end user using input function, and this value that we get via input function will be converted to float using float function. So the first value gets stored in A and the second value gets stored in B, and finally we have print function which helps us to print the values. What values we have? Okay, so again I'm using string formatting. The concept of string formatting where the value of A, B and A plus B gets formatted in this message and it prints to the console. The message gets printed to the console. So if I pass any two values, the sum of these two values will be written as output. So let me give a try, guys. I'm defining the function. Done. Now I'm calling it. I'm just calling it. Have defined and I'm calling it. So when I call it in the back end, it starts executing line by line. See, enter first name for addition. First value for addition, it is asking me to enter. So I'll keep it as say 20. Then after clicking on enter again, it is asking me to enter second value for addition. Okay, so I'll give it as 30. What happened? What happened? It returned me A plus B. But 20 plus 30 is 50, right? Why did I get 50.0? It is because of float function. See, even if you observe carefully, okay, so what exactly happening is 20 that we are passing gets converted to float value. 30 gets passed and that gets converted to float value. 20.0, 30.0. These values get summed up. Clear? Right. Next to it, one more example for function. df keyword followed by square root is the function name. Okay. Next to it, we have parenthesis and followed by the logic, the block of code. What do we see here? Again, I'm using input function. Okay. So this input function allows the end user to pass the values. Yes. So that value gets converted to float value. And this value will be stored in n. And what I am doing? I am going to calculate the square root of that value. This is called power operator. Double asterisk mark represents power operator. So power 0.5 represents 1 by 2, nothing but square root. And that final output value is what we are printing using string formatting option. String formatting concept we are just following, and we are getting the output. I'm defining the function, done, and I'm calling the function. I'm calling the function. So when I call the function, it will ask me to give a number. Let me pass 25. We know that 25 square root of 25 is 5. But here it will return as 5.0. The reason is I'm converting the value to float. I'm converting the value to float. So that is why we see 5.0 instead of 5. So I hope you got some good understanding regarding functions. What is the purpose of function? Function help us for code reusability. In function, we'll have two parts. One is function definition and the other one is function call. Okay. So the syntax is def keyword followed by function name, parenthesis, and then colon, indentation symbol. Right. Now, let us understand the concept of arguments and parameters. In Python, there are 5 different types of parameters arguments. Okay, there are 5 different types of parameters and arguments passing mechanisms. They are positional parameters or arguments, default parameters or arguments, keyword parameters or the arguments, variable length parameters or arguments, and the last one is keyword variable length arguments or parameters. We'll understand all these 5 types of parameters arguments, the values that we pass inside the function. So let me start with positional parameters or arguments. What exactly is this positional arguments? Is the positional argument says that the number of arguments, okay, the number of arguments must be equals to the number of formal parameters. So when you are defining a function, you generally have the parameters listed down. So these are called formal parameters. Okay, when you are calling the function, you'll pass the values for them. Yes. So the concept of positional argument says that these values should be equal. If you are defining with 3, you should also call them with only 3. Right? That is what positional arguments or parameters say. The concept of positional arguments talk about it. And Python follows by default positional parameters. concept of positional parameters is followed by default in Python. So when you define the function in this way, and when you call the function by passing the values to the parameters, so the argument 1 will be passed to param 1, argument 2 will be passed to param 2, argument n will be passed to param n. So how are they getting passed? Upon their position. Based on their position, the value is getting passed. That is why they are called as positional arguments or parameters. I hope it is making sense. Let us work out on a few examples related to positional arguments. Right. So what do you see here, guys? Is this a function first of all? Is this a function? Yes, it is a function. Okay. So def keyword followed by the function name in which I have three formal parameters. What are they? S number, serial number, name and marks. Okay, we have three parameters: serial number, name and marks. And the logic, the block of statement says to print these values by using string formatting concept. That's it, simple function. So I'm defining my function. Is it done? Yes, it is. Now, I'm calling the function, guys. Disp student info. It is nothing but display student info. Okay. So I'm passing the values to the parameters. But these values that we pass in line number 710, they will be assigned to the formal parameters based on their position. So S number takes 10, name takes Rosam, marks take 33.33. But how it is able to do it? Upon the position, based on the position, the values get assigned and these values will be formatted. Backslash t represents tab space. Yes. So all these values gets printed with tab space. That's it. Simple. A small function to just understand the concept of positional arguments. Next to positional arguments, we have default arguments or parameters. There are default parameters or arguments. What are these default parameters or arguments? So in general, there might be a value. There might be some common values, okay, that can take a default value. Okay, so during the function calls, there can be a common value that can be taken as the same value. That will be defined as default parameter. That will be defined as default parameter. If you see here, param 1, param 2, param n minus 1 is equals to value 1. Param n is equals to value 2. So these both are nothing but default parameters. Why? Because when I'm defining the function itself, okay, so I'm also coming up with the default value for them. Value 1 will be the default value for param n minus 1. Value 2 will be the value for param n. But param 1 and 2 are called positional. Param 1 and 2 will be positional, guys. But since I am coming up with the values for the rest of the two parameters, there will be default parameters. And especially when you are using these default parameters in the function, they have to be kept at the last position. They have to be kept at the last position. Otherwise, it will raise some exceptions. The syntax error is what you'll get. You can also give a try when you are doing the hands-on. You can give a try by changing the positions. Okay, so let us understand an example coming to default parameters. So what you see here, a function def keyword and the same function display student info, S number, name, marks and city by default has a value. It is HYD, Hyderabad. The default value for city is Hyderabad. So city becomes a default parameter. And these values, when you call the function, when you pass the values for these parameters, these values will be formatted and it prints the values. So the logic is very simple to understand within the function. Now let me call the function. Display student info is what I'm calling, and I'm passing the values for the parameters. But I'm passing only 3, right? There are 4. There are 4 parameters, but still it executes. The reason is S number, serial number, name, marks are positional arguments or positional parameters. So the values are assigned based on their position. Even though if you don't pass any value for the default parameter, the default value will be taken. The default value will be considered. And this will print me 10 Rosam 33.33 and Hyderabad as well. See. But what if I want to change the value for city? I don't want Hyderabad. Is it possible to change? Yes. Specify the value that you want to change when you are calling the function. So that value will be returned. So when you don't pass, the default value will be returned. When you want to change, yes, it's in your hand. You can specify the required value and that value will be returned. Understood? Yes. Now let us go and discuss the third type of parameters or arguments. It is keyword parameters. It is keyword parameters. See, in some cases, we know the function name and we also know the formal parameters that are used, the names of the formal parameters that we used. But if you don't know the order of these formal parameters, if we don't know the order of these formal parameters, okay, and if you want to pass the values exactly, then we use the concept of keyword parameters. Then we use the concept of keyword parameters. How? It says that the implementation of keyword parameters or arguments says that all the formal parameters, it used as arguments in function call. So during the function call, we'll pass the values by taking these formal parameters as keys. So this is my function definition. I'm defining the function here. I'm calling the function here. So if I don't know the order of these parameters, formal parameters, but if I want to pass the exact values for these parameters, then I can use that formal parameter as key and I can pass the value. I'll use it as key. I'll pass the value. So this is possible. Since I'm using them as keys and passing the values, the values will be accepted as is. All of them are keyword arguments only, keyword parameters. Okay, so let us take an example to understand keyword parameters or keyword arguments. I'm coming up with the function disp. The function name is disp. So this disp function is going to have three parameters, three formal parameters A, B, C, and what does the logic says? Just to format the values, whatever the values that A, B, C gets, these values will be formatted. So it gets printed. That's it. That is what the function says. Now I'm calling the function, guys, and I'm passing the values. Can you tell me what are these 10, 20, 30 becomes? 10, 20, 30 becomes positional arguments. Why? Based on the position A takes 10. Based on the position B takes 20. Based on the position C takes 30. So here in case of line number 726, we are actually passing positional arguments. But how did I convert them to keyword arguments? Have a look. If I use them as keys, if I use these ABC, the formal parameters as keys, and if I pass the values, A is equals to 10, C is equals to 30, B is equals to 20. Am I following any order? Order is not required. You are using the keyword directly. When you are using the keyword, what is the use of going and specifying the order? Irrespective of the order, the values will be assigned for these parameters and it, prints the values. The output will be same. The output is same, guys. What about line number 728? Go for a guess. In line number 728, not just passing C and B becomes keyword arguments, keyword parameters. But A becomes positional because am I using keyword A to pass the value for A? No. A takes 10, value 10 based on the position. So A becomes positional parameter. B and C becomes keyword parameters. See, the output is same. There is no change with respect to the output. But we are understanding the difference between position and keyword parameters or arguments. I hope it is clear. Now, let us understand the fourth type of arguments, parameters. They are called variable length arguments or parameters. And why did the concept of variable length parameters or arguments evolve? This is because of if I want to pass multiple values for a single parameter, if I want to pass multiple values, okay, I can do it, I can achieve it using variable length parameter. And we represent it using the symbol asterisk mark. Using asterisk mark, we represent variable length parameter. During the function definition, if you find any of the parameter with star symbol, it represents variable length argument or parameter. And what is the purpose of it? It helps us to store or hold any number of values. I can pass n number of values. And the type by default, it will be tuple. It accepts the type as tuple. Okay, the rule again, two important rules. The variable length parameter must always return at the last of the position. Okay, so when you are using this parameter, variable length parameter, it is generally used at the last position. But what if there is also a default parameter? along with variable length, if there is also default parameter, then we use default parameter as last. And before that, we use variable length parameter. Okay, so if you don't have default, you should keep variable length parameter as the last one. But if you have default parameters, then default will be at the last. Okay, so that is the order. Now, let me take a few examples and understand how variable length parameters are accepting multiple values. What do you see here, guys? I'm defining a function called display. Yes, in which what is the parameter that I have? It is a variable length parameter. How can I identify it? I see the star mark in front of the parameter. Now, it starts entering. Okay, there is a loop in which it takes each and every value from this list of values, tuple of values, and it prints one by one. Okay, it prints one by one. The values gets printed, and at the end it also prints nothing. That's it. So this is my function, and I'm going to define it. I'm going to define it. Done. Now I'll call the function, but how many values am I passing? I'm passing 3 values. Will it allow me? Yes, it allows you to take n number of values. You can also pass n values. So initially, val takes 10 and it prints 10. Then 20 gets printed. Then 30. See. So only one parameter which is accepting multiple values. In the same way, will it also allow me to accept 4 values? Yes, it accepts 4 n values as well. I hope it is clear. What is the purpose of variable and parameters? It helps us to store or hold multiple values. And we identify variable and arguments, parameters using that symbol star. Okay. And how many variable and arguments can you have within the function definition? Only one. Very important, guys. And finally, keyword variable length arguments are parameters. And the purpose of keyword variable length arguments is they help us to store. They help us to store or hold any number of keyword key value pairs. Any number of key value pairs from the similar function call. And by default, the type will be dict. How do we identify them? Double star. Double asterisk mark will identify us. It is a keyword variable length argument or parameter. And when you are defining the function, okay, when you are defining the function, you can have only one keyword variable length parameter. And for identification, you'll identify it as 2 stars. 2 stars. And by default, it takes the type as dict. So this is the concept coming to keyword variable and arguments. A few more examples are pending, guys. We'll complete it. And you see here, I'm defining the function, the display function, same display function. But if you see here, this is a keyword variable length argument. Keyword variable length parameter. A is a keyword variable length parameter in which it is going to print, the function says to print 50s hyphen followed by a for loop. Followed by a for loop. So what does the for loop say? For k comma v in a dot items, we know that, a accepts only a dict object. Yes, a accepts only dict object. So items is a function which returns us both keys and values from dict objects. Okay, there is a function called items which is used on dict objects which returns keys and the values. So k takes keys and v takes values. And these values of k and v gets formatted and they get printed. These values of k and v gets printed. So let me define the function first of all. Done. So I'm going to pass multiple key value pairs. C. City, TS, capital, Hyderabad, language, some Telugu, Hindi, English. Okay. So in this way I'm passing multiple key values, keys and values. So all these keys and values will be taken one by one and they get printed. See what's happening? One by one they get printed. The value of k gets formatted here and the value of v gets formatted here. The positions. In the same way, can I also pass multiple? Not just 3. Yes, multiple. Let me try with 4. 440, 400, Yavish. N number of key value pairs can be passed and they help us to store these values. So just only one parameter is actually returning this output. So this marks the end of Python, guys. We have completed the concepts of Python, whatever we have promised. We have understood history of Python, features, variables, data types, operators, conditional statements, loops, then control statements as well as functions. All these concepts were being cleared along with hands-on. So what are we going to learn from tomorrow? From tomorrow, our sessions will be on interesting topics like EDA. We'll be learning data analysis. We'll be learning data analysis, then followed by data cleansing, and widely used machine learning and deep learning algorithm. Okay, we'll understand data visualization as well as the widely used machine learning and deep learning algorithm in real time. Okay, so all these sessions you'll have it in our YouTube channel. So subscribe to our channel as we are going to come up with amazing content in the upcoming days. Okay, you can also go through these sessions whenever you have good amount of time. Okay, so they are available in our channel and our channel is Next Era Unitech. So any questions in the topics related to Python? The feedback link has been provided. Please provide your valuable feedback, and if you find that the session went well, hit on the like button as well. Do share these sessions among your connections. Before you leave, please give your valuable feedback.